that whole idea about why relationships matter in business. And I think that for me, relationships are all that matter.
Welcome to More Than Profit, the podcast where values, vision, and capital converge. Produced by Access Ventures, this show spotlights the leaders and innovators redefining success, not just through financial returns, but by the impact they create. Every episode dives into the inspiring stories, bold ideas, and hard-won lessons of those who are leveraging capital, financial, intellectual, and social, for equity, sustainability, and systematic change. Whether you're an investor, entrepreneur, or purpose-driven professional, we are here to challenge the status quo, push the boundaries of traditional investing, and inspire you to align your resources with your values. Join us as we explore how capital can be a force for meaningful change.
Hey folks, today we're doing something a little different. Not only are we looking back at 2024, a year filled with challenges, milestones, and unexpected lessons, but we're also looking ahead to 2025 and what's next for this podcast, for Access Ventures, and the world we're striving to shape. Today, joining me, Bryce Butler, are my co-hosts and collaborators, Brian McKay and TJ Aboud. Together, we'll reflect on the themes and takeaways that define this past year, dig into bold changes we're making here at More Than Profit, and share a preview of what's to come. As a team, we're stepping into a new format, each of us taking the reins as hosts to bring even more diverse conversations to your ears. We're excited to push the boundaries of traditional investing and philanthropy and inspire you to rethink how your capital, whether financial, intellectual, or social, can serve a higher purpose. So settle in as we dive into a rich conversation about the past, the future, and how we're committed to growing the More Than Profit community in ways that hopefully influence more capital for good. Okay, so we are starting a new year, 2025, and we've been doing More Than Profit now, I don't know, last 3.5 years or so. Mostly me. Brian's been a part of it, TJ. It's kind of interesting. We got into these conversations with people, first and foremost, because I just wanted to talk to interesting people. And it's like, why not record it? And then we've just been doing it. I think we're on episode 80 right now. We kind of took a hiatus a little bit in 2024, got busy with some other things, but are excited to kind of get back into it this year. And one of the things that I'm excited about is that we're going to start sharing the host chair. We've tried to figure out, okay, is this Bryce Butler's podcast? What is this? And I think it's really an opportunity for us at Access Ventures to collectively share the platform. And then I think from our unique vantage points and skill sets to interview interesting people and hopefully convince people that putting their money towards good things is not a negative. It's a positive. And there's ways to do it for both financial and social impact. So guys, I'm glad to have you here. Obviously, we've been friends and partners for a long time, but it's exciting in 2025 to do that. So
I just was going to add, though, and make sure that we have fun along the way.
Yeah, yes. And why is that, Brian?
Just because that's one of the tenets of Access Ventures is fun. Fun along the way is what we always say and actually always do. And I was actually not a proponent of it when I first joined 3 years ago. And I'm a big believer in it now. So,
but why were you not originally so?
I didn't think it made sense. I'm like, I don't know, life, I don't know. But yeah, so now I think I just look at it and go, if people are having fun, good things happen. And so like dinners and get-togethers and all those things, I just think if we are having fun while we do it, I just think it's more memorable. And then people want to come back.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah. So
with that, Brian, and we'll kind of go down the order, but your role, oftentimes I get from people, you worked with us at AV for the last 3 years now, I think. Yep. Been on the board before that. Yep. So been around our work for a long time, but a question that I get a lot is, so what does Brian do?
Yeah. And my wife jokes, my kids ask that. Then, yeah.
I've heard it.
Yeah.
So Brian, help our listeners understand kind of your role at Access Ventures and why, and then I can get to a little bit of like why it's important, but I'd love to hear from your vantage point.
Well, it's interesting because we did a dinner last night with some 22 to 30-year-olds, and Bryce was articulating, because I do think they were asking the same question of what is my role and those things. And what was interesting, and I'd written out some things before, but just that whole idea about why relationships matter in business. And I think that for me, relationships are all that matter. And so I think any business I've ever been in, I've been highly relational. And for some reason, I can build trust with people really quickly. And by doing that, I can bring parties together that maybe wouldn't have gotten together, and beautiful things happen. And so that's been anything, I mean, starting even in high school, where I was friends with multiple groups in college, and, I would bring people together and sometimes was purchasing things I shouldn't have been. But, it was just that thing going. I had relationships at all different groups. And
give our listeners the example in high school, just like even getting through class, like you're.
Yeah. So here, here's the funny thing. And I hope people I went to Wheaton North in high school. And what's funny to me is I was the class speaker, and it was always the valedictorian that was what's the other one? Valedictorian and
salutatorian?
Yeah. Two people that I was not either of those.
Or the class president sometimes.
Yeah. And so I just remember that sense of dread when they voted me in to be the class speaker. And I was really like, what is going on? And I just remember one of the teachers pulling me to the side and just saying, you have relational capital that I've never seen before. And, so it had never been before that someone, and so I ended up being the class speaker, and my teachers were terrified of the profanity that might come out of my mouth at any time. So I'm a loose cannon, if you don't know that. And, but it was that beautiful thing that I just remember going, wow. And then college, same thing, where I can remember, even like with teachers, I got better grades in classes because I knew the teachers, I knew their kids. And, and there was something I just remember learning early on, if I invest in relationships in a genuine way. And that's, I've had people study me trying to figure out how do I do it. And I think there's a piece of going, I genuinely care, which makes a huge difference.
It's a differentiator. It is.
But like, and so people matter to me. And so when you ask me what
and that's where it's different than like, in traditional people, they learn sales, they learn like relationship management.
And I'm not a good salesperson.
Exactly. Because because a lot of that stuff is transactional. It's like, I need something from you. And so it's hard to know if this person's pandering to me because they need something from me, if it's an authentic, genuine thing. But what I love is your ability to come to people and to see them and to make them feel like nothing else matters than them right then and there. And so when people say like, well, what does Brian do? It's like, well, he does that. And it's like the same thing on fun. It's like fun and authentic relationships, they are foundational to how we think about communities and flourishing. And it doesn't make normal business sense, but I think
because you can't quantify it.
You can.
Yeah.
You can.
But I will say this, last night at the dinner,
who was at the dinner?
So last night we had a fellowship group that we started last year. They're 22 to, it's so Access Ventures Fellowship, and it's younger people, 22 to 30, and they're working on projects on flourishing. And this is something that we started just because we wanted to reach a younger demographic and wanted to be helpful. And the cool thing with it is we are taking new applications right now through January.
Through the end of January, yeah.
If you know someone 22 to 30 that's working on would have aspirations to be working on some kind of flourishing project, Access Ventures actually provides a $20,000 grant that they can use as a stipend or they can put towards a project. So there's a ton of things they can do with it. And it's been great. So it's our first one. But people were talking to me, asking me last night when we were having drinks, what's my best job? And I said, my best job ever has been working at Access Ventures. And the distinction is I've had great bosses. Well, not a lot of great, but I've had great bosses. And, but with Access Ventures, they really allow me to be me and really get behind me completely saying, go, run, do. And I've never had that before. And I'm 58 years old. And I've been here 3 years where people are always, yeah, but just don't do this or don't say that or, those things. And, and again,
or fill out this form.
Which I won't do.
Check Slack.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Well,
it's like, hey, Brian, did you see that Slack message I sent you?
Let's be positive here. But anyways, I really do. I look at it going, I really feel like I'm thriving in the best way. And part of it is because we do have fun every day. And I tell these guys, I love waking up and getting to do my job. And it's different with, working with different fellowships and different businesses and things like that. But just really see myself as anything relational with an AV, I want to be a part of. I want to be.
Well, and everything's relational.
Well,
so, that's the thing. Yeah. Like the three of us work really closely together because everything we do is about people. And I think the core value of fun, it's kind of weird. But I think if you think about any type of business transaction, family transaction, interaction, whatever, it includes just doing everyday things together, and it better be fun. So, okay, so turning to TJ real quick.
Well, one comment on Brian, because I think about it, we're not, you mentioned relationships and they're transactional in sales. And so with us, we're not selling widgets out of Solon, Ohio. So for us, it's how can we influence how people think about their money and the world around them towards human flourishing. And so you need to traffic in trust at that point, because it's not an ask that benefits them as well. It's much more, hey, we have this idea and we would love to share it with you and go further and see how it can impact your life and those in your community. You have to trust the person.
Right.
Otherwise, you're
Right.
just kind of a lunatic.
Right.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
No, I think that's a good point. I like that phrase, traffic and trust. Okay, so TJ, you and I have been working together almost 10 years now. And your role, I mean, obviously you've been on the podcast, and but Chief Investment Officer, you really manage a lot of the stuff of AV. I mean, I guess like anything, an endowment, a family office, a foundation, people see the stuff that's more out in the world in a sense, like the fellowship programs, the housing stuff. But at the end of the day, we're a finance company. You know what I mean? Like nonprofit, but we have an endowment that needs to be managed. And that's kind of your role. And so I think that's what at times people don't, see, but man, it takes a lot to manage a multi-asset strategy, let alone a crazy strategy that wants to align that with values.
Yeah. Yeah, the first part's much easier than the second part, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think, a lot of people that get into finance, it's like, oh yeah, I understand this. Let's go maximize our return. Let's go find good fund managers that are doing that. But then to be said, oh yeah, and by the way, let's go find people that actually are trying to manifest our values on the world. Okay, go do that. So
yeah, it's been a fun challenge for sure. Coming from a traditional finance background and private equity, that sort of work, there's a financial engineering component to it. And the human element is much more, how can we produce the outcomes we need with the fewest amount of people?
Yeah.
And so in turnover, one of the industries I was in, turnover was welcomed because it kept the cost of labor down. It's like, okay, well, we can just shuffle people through and we can still pay them minimum wage.
Right.
When you come in and you do this sort of work and it's not simply about financial return, there's more to it. It's a far more difficult task than, the much more like the flashier parts of finance. I mean, we're here in New York and we're a few blocks from the financial district and couldn't be worlds away when it comes to this sort of stuff.
Well, we were this morning at one of our portfolio companies' offices, Ethic. And so for folks that aren't familiar, I mean, we've interviewed Jay Littman in the past, previous episode that we can link in the show notes. But I mean, again, that example of a company that now almost $7 billion under management.
That's right.
And we were one of their first checks. But I mean, just seeing their growth and maturation as a company, but completely aligned with how do we help people manifest their values through their portfolio? So how is that different than kind of the normal endowment management model?
Wow. Well, there's a few things. In the normal endowment management model, it's just let's maximize return. Let's park it over here, and we'll kick off enough that we need for operations, and let's offset some of those return needs by revenue producing things. So universities will have that. So tuition helps offset what they need out of the endowment. Well, in a lot of cases, the endowments more than fund the OpEx of the university.
Yeah, especially today with education changing for sure.
Exactly. So first of all, it can be indiscriminate on one side. You certainly outsource things to other folks. What Ethic is doing, it's saying, hey, we're going to replicate what you can get there, but you're going to have a say in it. It's going to match your values. And they've been around for, when did we get involved?
10 years at least. 9 years?
Yeah, it's something like
2016,
that.
I think.
2016. And so, for them, they've had to, it's like any other startup when you're disrupting something, not only do you have to essentially sell something that works, you also have to convince somebody they need it because it's new. And so they've been great at that over the years and helping people see differently how their money's put to work. And, they were, Bryce, you can tell a story, but they were kind of walking us through how you can take someone that, doesn't believe in conservation at the beginning, but if you talk to them for a while, understand what matters to them, linking it back into, well, you can see how that conservation would actually help improve the things that you care deeply about.
So let's talk something provocative right now.
Well, wait, before you go there, but so sitting there today, I think the story I keep going back to on the relationship side, though, is saying you guys invested, 2016, $250,000. You were one of their first investors.
Yep.
And so all these years later, they're at $7 billion. they really have no need. We're not.
There's no reason we should be talking to them.
But it's that thing going, they really do hold Access Ventures dear. I mean, it's that thing going, because you guys were there in the beginning, and then, right after that, we actually end up having another person come in that with Samaritan, and it was cool because you were early with him also.
Yeah.
And so I do think, again, back to why relationships matter. I just go, both those are highly relational, because those guys have great affection for Access Ventures and you two. And I just go, it's just fun to watch. It's fun to watch how all that unfolds and the genuine affection they have just seeing you guys. So anyways, okay, something provocative.
No, I mean, that's great. I appreciate that. But the provocative thing, TJ, I think you have spearheaded a movement towards the blockchain and digital assets. And, we did that early 2017. Honestly, I was skeptical,
yes.
I mean, because it was new. We manage an endowment. It's like, why would we do this? And so you and a team member set out on kind of crafting a thesis around why we should think about and care about digital assets and how they should fit into our portfolio. Talk to why, give us a little bit of why they matter when we think about our mission statement as human flourishing. Why should we even pay attention to this?
I guess I'm trying to think about where to start with that. I'd say personally why it matters. It's something that I saw the value of and cared deeply about. And one of the benefits.
But why? Why was that? Why that? Because there could have been 100 different things
Well, yes. So when I first kind of learned about Bitcoin, for example, I was like, okay, I get that. Sound money. That thesis makes sense to me. But when I understood smart contracts and Ethereum specifically, I was like, oh, this is a real innovation that can go beyond, not that money's a small use case, but I remember once I understood how it worked, I go, oh, this could completely change the financial system. Because my background, banking, just thinking through all the plumbing, I was like, wait, we can get much more efficient and transparent with this. And so that was something that I cared about for a long time. And bringing it into the office and having to convince Mr. Butler over here that it was worth time thinking about. It took a while. It took probably 6 months, I think, but you gave me a chance to run with it.
You wore him down?
I did, incessant.
Well, honestly, I just said, figure out a thesis. Because our whole thing at that point was financial inclusion, which is super broad. I mean, that's fintech. And at that point was really hot. And the difficulty I think we were running into with our direct strategy at that point, venture strategy, was being a small shop, can we get into the deals that really matter? And like an ethic, where can we actually have a relationship where they pay attention to us? And so that was, I think, our big challenge. And so with the mandate of financial inclusion, access to the economy, TJ basically came and said, well, I think if we could focus in this area, we could have an outsized influence. And so
part of it was born out of, I think it would maximize the return on our time and attention to go deeper in one thing. And what my view and eventually our view on blockchain was, we had been investing in what we call fintech for financial inclusion, and then technology for social good. Essentially, what's a venture scalable company that, when pointed in the direction of the groups that we care about as Access Ventures, it would make a massive difference. And so what I saw was blockchain's kind of both of those things. When you think about, fintech for financial inclusion, I can't remember how many, maybe 3 billion people are excluded from the financial system for one reason or another. Well, when you look at a decentralized financial system like what blockchain can facilitate, well, it's decentralized. There's no one standing in the way in theory, right? There's a lot of practical things that get in the way, education being one of them, but we're thinking long term. What can this be? And it can be, blockchain itself can be the technology for social good, not an application. By its sheer existence, you can build any application that you want that would open up and serve multiple people.
Because I remember, the one thing that sold me was when you talked about, the adoption of the internet. I remember Steve Case, when he was going around selling AOL, he was shipping these CDs to everybody to get them online. But now it's so ubiquitous, the fact that access to information and our connection to the World Wide Web people don't think about their life any other way. In fact, with AI and other things, it's just so a part of everything we do. And so when you told me like, oh, actually, if we can get to a point of adoption within the financial services and financial sector and mainstream banking, like, wow, the potential that this now, because it was interesting in the early days, a lot of stuff we were seeing 2016, 2017 were on-chain solutions that were like, let's help people in Africa get access. And those are awesome things. And that's a huge potential use case for the blockchain, but you have to have mass adoption first. And so I think what I appreciated about your thesis from the early days was like, okay, how do we identify innovative blockchain solutions that actually move towards adoption, and then we can get towards.
That's right. And that was a provocative thing back then. I remember we went to SOCAP and did some talks on blockchain, and folks were a little bit disappointed because we didn't bring last mile solutions. And there's plenty of last mile solutions back in 17, moving into 18 that were great, provenance stuff that can help, fishing in illegal waters. So there are things like that, but they didn't go anywhere, right? They're great experiments and a showcase of what it can be, but that wasn't investable at the time. We had to get there. And so our first thesis in blockchain, you're right, was what are the things that we can invest in that will lead to it becoming ubiquitous? Then we can look for the last mile solutions.
Yeah. So give us a picture. Where are we now? Because I think it's been really interesting, our journey with digital assets. It started off with like, let's focus our direct investments, build a blockchain fund. We did that for a couple of years, and then we moved towards more of a kind of a multi-asset strategy. Where are we now, and what's exciting about kind of 2025 as we think about our digital asset focus?
How much time do we have?
Elevator pitch.
No. So from that first thesis, the thing with this industry is it moves so fast. And so you can't just develop a static thesis and execute for, 10 years. And so we would refresh that thesis, say, where are we? And where do we see, it going? And after about a year, we redid the thesis and focused on, okay, now we're going to go deeper in the financial services piece. Because the first one, you needed certain things. In order to have mass adoption, you had to address structural issues like speed, developer tools, all of that. That stuff started to come online. So let's go deeper into finance. And so we went into DeFi and started doing more in that space. And another year goes by, we look at, okay, that space is maturing. What do we do? Well, back to the original comment of my vision for this technology is that it could basically rebuild the entire financial system. And so ultimately, it was like, okay, I think we have enough on-chain solutions that I could replicate our portfolio. And in that case, we don't need what would be a venture strategy anymore. There are all these tokens that we can get into. We don't have an access issue early on to get the multiple returns we need. We can go and actually build the portfolio that I envisioned all the way back in the day. And so now we look at it and we say, hey, we have not a fund that is capped, deployment targets, all of that. We actually treat this like you would treat any portfolio that you have. It's a portion of our assets and it gets rebalanced. And we look at thematics and say, what's growing? Where do we think X is going to be? Should we invest more or not? And that's a ton of fun because you're not putting a lot of energy in defining the next best thing. You're taking what you know and applying it to the things that exist. And that's fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. And I think what I love is it actually fits our ethos of like, okay, we fundamentally believe in this technology and where it's going. Let's like now build it into our endowment structure and strategy. So that's great. I'm excited.
And just again, elevator pitch. What do you say to the naysayers? Because I just think how many times we've been sitting around a campfire and people just jump on it's the worst idea ever. How do you...
Until like the last couple of months. And
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's certainly a lot of naysayers. And depending on what cycle you're in, you're either a genius or you're a fool. And so at some point, you just point to the returns. You go, I don't know what you see, but I see this. But truthfully...
We've had good returns.
We've had fantastic returns. And I think really taking a measured approach. And so I've actually been laughed at because I'm not into the money games. I'm not just trying to day trade tokens into being a, multimillionaire. But that's a lot of what you read about. And when you are sitting around a fire, that's what people think. It's just some huge money game. And when I talk to them, I just treat it like I'm talking about any other investment. And that can be a little surprising.
I think that's the interesting thing, because I think most of our listeners are like, okay, great, this blockchain thing. But TJ, should I buy Bitcoin at 100,000?
Yeah.
And that's just the wrong question. I think, yes, maybe, I think, but because I think what we see is the potential for a future that's decentralized. So with that in mind, TJ, like 2025, there's lots of conversations out there about where crypto's going. Last 18 months, the FTX blow up. What is still needed for kind of adoption to be realized, for us to actually live into this future where more people have access to the economy through a blockchain decentralized kind of manifestation of that?
It's interesting because there's kind of two worlds in which you would answer that. The first is globally, but then the second being the United States. And so the question is, where is it driven from? But if I speak here in the US, regulatory clarity is kind of number one, because a lot of projects are still operating a little bit in the dark. And so they're not necessarily taking the risk that they want. They're not operating here in the United States, tapping into talent, all of that. And so we need regulatory clarity. First, I think stablecoins and understanding the role that they play in the financial system. It seems like people are warming up to the idea. There have been large companies you've heard of investing, billions of dollars into stablecoin infrastructure. It seems like we're getting there. And when you think about a use case, holy cow, decentralized, people all around the world have access to the dollar now when they couldn't have it before.
Yeah.
So clarity on how to operate, are these token securities or not, so that, that's a source of funding and a source of adoption. And we need to understand that in order to get new projects off the ground, let the winners grow, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
On a Thursday afternoon in March of 2022, Jamie Cantor, a vet tech and animal lover, was in a fender bender. Although she initially felt only a bit of soreness, the pain rapidly worsened over the next few days. She eventually went to the ER, where doctors told her that if they didn't operate soon, she might lose her ability to walk. After the surgery, Jamie's slow recovery made work difficult, and it was even harder to make ends meet. Then her medical bill arrived, and she was shocked to find that it totaled over $43,000. Fortunately, Jamie learned about a new free initiative called $4 that helps people navigate the confusing processes of charity care. She reached out to them, and they immediately responded and offered to submit all the necessary paperwork for her to apply for financial assistance. A few months later, Jamie received an adjusted medical bill. The total owed was now only $1,300 instead of $43,000. Over $40,000 of her debt had been completely eliminated thanks to the work of $4. To remain tax exempt, nonprofit hospitals must offer financial assistance programs to low to middle income patients. But with little federal oversight of these programs, most hospitals do the bare minimum to educate patients about them, which means patients don't receive the financial assistance they should. In 2021 alone, hospitals reaped $17 billion in tax benefits from their nonprofit status, most of which should have gone to charity care or community investment. There are millions of people in the U.S., like Jamie Cantor, who carry an unfair financial burden due to medical costs. $4 is working to crush medical bills by making charity care known, easy, and fair. To date, $4 has helped eliminate over $20 million of medical debt, and they aren't stopping anytime soon. If you or someone you know are facing medical debt and don't know where to start in applying for financial assistance, check out $4.org today. And now back to the episode.
Okay, guys. So 2024, we're done. It's in the past. Chapter closed. But for each of you, kind of what are some of your favorite moments of 2024?
I think we start with you.
That's fine. I don't mind starting. But
again,
favorite moments in 2024 and lessons learned would be a good kind of, and I'll start, just give you guys a moment to think about it. And then we can jump into 2025. But I'll say some of my favorite moments obviously are always with other people. TJ, I think of most recently being in New York where we are right now, at the Multicoin Summit. And, you know, it had been a while since you and I had gone on a learning tour. It was great to be back out learning together about blockchain and kind of where things are going. And an exciting time. It was post-election. And so the crypto industry was on fire. And so there was a lot of conversation around exactly what we were just talking about. And so the timing couldn't have been better. So for me, that was one of the highlights. I think another is the fellowships that we've been able to kind of experiment with this year. Our AV fellowship for 22 to 30-year-olds. And then we have an executive fellowship. I'm thinking like a moment that sticks in my mind is doing the Camino in Spain. And Brian and I are sitting there with some folks kind of at a transition point in their careers and just, yeah, I mean, it was super cool and a great experience to kind of journey.
And a lot of time to think.
A lot of time to think.
Yeah.
So those are some of my favorite moments. Brian, what about you?
I would definitely say, well, some of the travel that the three of us have done and then meeting up with people. And when I stay with the theme of relationships, thinking about how just encouragement matters and, you know, showing up when people are going through some difficult situations and we don't even know, but providentially we're with them at a dinner and just able to encourage them and, you know, in a sense, love them, just going, we're here, we're sorry. And it wasn't even like we even had any practical advice, but I would say I can think of 3 or 4 times where we were just sitting with people and just going, I'm sorry that happened, or be excited with them and have, you know, a situation where I would say that I have lots of funny moments that, you know, again, I'm much more shallow than these two. That's what I bring to this. So we're with Bryce, and I did not know this about Bryce. Bryce hates pizza.
Yeah, I'm not a pizza fan.
So, Bryce
just lost a lot of your listeners.
No, I'm just saying this, and I mean this in a real way. Bryce is one of the toughest people I know. I mean, that dude can endure a lot of bad things. I mean, I've watched him, you know, fly middle seat, you know, red eye, and doesn't even complain. I'm like, I'm freaking out, but you know, he doesn't. But watching him pout about pizza was the first time that I just thought, wow,
I didn't pout.
There's chinks in his armor. I was shocked. I would say that. And then I think, you know, again, you know, like a lesser moment, but greater moment for me is TJ got married this year, and, you know, I got to perform the wedding and be there for it. And again, that was a highlight for me, just celebrating with him, and a bunch of his friends showed up. So I would say those are some of the highlights for me for this year. And then I think my biggest highlight going into 2025 that started in 2024 is Access Ventures Foundation. And, you know, I hope we get to touch on that. But again, when we talk about, we really want to influence capital in a positive way. And it's that thing going, we don't want or need anything from you, but we want to be helpful to as many people as possible. And I would think that at Access Ventures, we have a lot to say in regards to that. And so I'm excited for us to roll this out, and you'll get more information along the way. But I would say, you know, that would be another huge highlight for me with Access Ventures.
Yeah, I will start with the wedding. That was special to have my 2 closest friends involved.
Just those that don't know, Bryce sang. Anyways.
He did. We'll post that video somewhere. That was really special. And I don't know to what extent we talk about culture on this podcast, because Bryce only brought me on a couple times, and do you really listen when you're not on?
Awkward.
But I think that's a testament to the culture here, is that we could do that and enjoy one another. I think, you know, when I think about work stuff, for example, I mentioned before, you know, you don't keep your theses static. Going through and fine-tuning the theses of Access Ventures again this year. And how do we operationalize this in our investment, but then also our daily work? It was such a wonderful thing to do, to just kind of sit and think deeply on the work that we've done. What are the themes? And can we articulate those and see more meaningful work come out of it? That was a big highlight of the year.
Yeah. I mean, that's really helpful, because I think, you know, a lot of people, when they're like, I thought you guys did neighborhood redevelopment. And we did. And I think what happens is, unfortunately, companies, organizations, they become a thing. And I think for us, and we were just talking with Jonathan Kumar from Samaritan this morning with the fellows, it's just like, what is that North Star? And let's be problem-oriented versus solutions-oriented. And I think what we mean by that is our problem that we're trying to solve for is this idea of flourishing. And so on the negative side of that, there are people that are disconnected, excluded, with barriers to participation. That's been our North Star. And the way we manifest that has changed. We did neighborhood redevelopment for a long time because there's a lot of folks in neighborhoods that need access and have limited agency. We've done housing work and housing insecurity stuff, and we'll continue a lot of that stuff around financial inclusion. But I think our North Star has always been, how do we identify where people are disconnected, overlooked, and underserved, and can we bring capital to bear in creative ways to solve those challenges? So,
and I think that that's one of the reasons why, folks have wanted to work with us. And so the AV Foundation is a great vehicle for that, but it's because the North Star doesn't change. However, how we're seeking to impact the world does. And we found ourselves being catalytic in different ways. So if you care about the problem, going with someone like us, partnering with us in any way, doesn't have to be a financial partner. It can be an operational partner. I'm thinking of the labs down in Nashville. The idea is that we're going to think differently about solving the problem, and we're not beholden to the way we did it 10 years ago.
Yeah, and since you guys mentioned it both, the AV Foundation, we launched a new startup. It's an experiment, but it's really, I think, our whole kind of underlying push has been, how do we influence more capital for good? And I think one of the best ways we can do that is, one, demonstrate through our own endowment and portfolio that it's possible to align values with financial returns. And I think we've done that faithfully and we'll continue. And then the second...
For 10 years.
For 10 years, yeah. And then the second is invitation. Like, how do we create opportunities for people to do this with us? And the journey over the last year and a half has been, AV, Access Ventures, there's always limitations. How do we understand those? We're structured, this is a little bit of in the weeds, but we're structured as a private operating foundation. And so it's great and it gives us a lot of freedom, but there are some areas where it's not as flexible, and that's in charitable donations from private citizens. And so it's always better to, from a tax advantage perspective, to give through a public charity. And so we've been asking our questions, okay, how do we don't really care, quote unquote, about the AUM, assets under management, but man, if we can influence more capital for good, what does that look like? And we saw two things. One, our limitations structurally, just like as a private operating foundation. And then secondarily, you look at the donor advised fund market, community foundations and others. What was started with a vision for collective impact and giving to pool resources for kind of greater impact has become highly transactional because the fee structures are so depressed. You have to chase AUM to kind of at least, get enough money to cover your costs. And so it creates this unvirtuous, cycle that's transactional. We're like, could we do that differently? That's been the question. Like, could we create a circumstance where, because of our endowment and the fact that we don't need to chase AUM and we don't need, quote unquote, to chase fees, could we unlock more capital for good by becoming a custodian of donor advised fund dollars and to support that? And so 2025 for us is an opportunity to kind of step into that world. We've launched the AV Foundation, which is a separate public charity that's aligned with kind of our purpose and direction. So that's an exciting thing for, I think, 2025.
And excited about, just because I think with Access Ventures, we're good at building community, and I'm excited to see what the community, that surrounds that will be. And I just think of a simple trip we took to Africa.
Yeah.
And from that, someone was like, hey, I'll put $25,000 towards this organization.
Building out a children's wing in a hospital.
Yeah. And then that was matched, and that's just friends, and and so.
Yeah. Well, the thing with DAFs too, like I'm realizing, we swim in this world. Like for the most part, like we just kind of live in endowments and different things. A lot of folks don't even know what they are.
Yeah.
And they think, honestly, one of the things, they don't know what they are, or they think it's only for the ultra high net worth. They don't recognize that, like, actually statistically, the average DAF size is 120,000. And really it's for anybody that has somewhat lumpy income and doesn't have the direct line of sight to every dollar that they want to give charitably going towards something they care about. It's just a great vehicle to think strategically.
It's interesting where I think there's more generosity born out of a DAF too. I mean, just
statistically, there is.
So we're excited about that and excited to see where all that goes. With that, what would be success for you with Access Ventures Foundation? What would be?
Well, I'm going to correct you. It's the AV Foundation by definition.
Okay.
So,
sorry. Yes.
Well, it's just important.
You missed that meeting.
Yeah. Well, again, and cut. Okay.
What's success? I think we're running an experiment. I think people care about learning, growing, investing, and doing good with other people. I think they do. I think fundamentally they do. And I think this idea where we've built philanthropy, specifically the donor advised fund market, as a highly transactional, individualized kind of experience, I think that fits some people's needs. But I fundamentally believe there's enough people out there that care about and say, hey, I want to do good around, pick the topic, foster care, anti-trafficking, neighborhoods, homelessness, housing insecurity. But they're like, I don't know, and I don't know if I know enough, but I'm interested in learning with other people. I think the data proves that out. I think, like you said, they give 30% more over a lifetime if they have a DAF. And it's statistically, people that do it with others give almost 2x more than they would have because they're inspired to do it by other people. And that's what I fundamentally believe. And that's what I'm hoping we can prove out over the next couple of years.
Yeah, exciting. So it'll be a little more of a boutique.
Yeah, very boutique.
Yeah.
Because again, I think if you're at a traditional DAF custodial shop, you have to chase fees. And so it's an AUM game to get the fees to pay for your team. We're coming in, we're trying to say, well, wait a minute. If we've got an endowment already and we have a good team, we don't have to chase the fees. We want to provide this as a service and an opportunity for people to join us in doing more good. So
it fits our mission. It's a vehicle that helps facilitate the influence of capital for good.
Yeah. So we started the podcast real quick on, where we're going with More Than Profit. And I want to kind of close on that note because this year, starting a new chapter, it has always been a podcast of Access Ventures. I've been the primary host, but I'm excited to now share the host chair with you all. And again, with that theme of influencing more capital for good, that's really why we do this. We want to, I think, dispel myths that people have, to introduce people to folks that are pursuing financial returns and impact, that are looking at the world differently, to hopefully move more capital towards these things. But you each bring different perspectives. So maybe TJ, I'll start with you and then move to Brian. But TJ, like your role, Chief Investment Officer, digital asset extraordinaire, like what unique voice do you think you're going to try to bring to More Than Profit as you host some episodes in the future?
Well, I hope it's unique.
They will be.
Reminder, you have not been on this podcast a lot. No, I mean, for me, I don't know if it's changed at all. To have a podcast is to talk to smart people and ask them dumb questions. And so I think my voice or my intention would be to bring folks on that are, in a conventional sense, investors or in finance, and pull out themes of human flourishing. And can we have those discussions? Do you see this in this work? What are the obstacles to that sort of thing? Just really to have a broad conversation on how things work now, and man, what would it look like if it worked differently?
Yeah. Same with you, Brian.
So I would say it's funny because when I think what my role is at Access Ventures and then within More Than Profit, like I really see the world in a whole different way. So we're interviewing really interesting people. So Bryce and I'll be interviewing people. I guess TJ's not involved as much, but anyways, he will be this year. But what I find interesting is the whole time we're talking to a very wealthy person, and in my mind, I'm like, how much money do you have in your wallet right now?
I love when you ask them that question too.
But it's that thing going, I hope to, in 2025, to bring a little bit of the human side of things also. Because I do laugh going, the conversations, there's times where I just wish I could record the conversations that I'm having with someone afterwards where they're getting into parenting or things like that, where I just get laughing going, actually, that was really interesting and very helpful. I mean, always from the perspective of human flourishing, but I also just go, the lesson I learned a long, long time ago is when people are sharing stories, people lean in. When people are like, and for lack of a better word, but like preachy or trying to teach something, people lean out. And I just always think if I can bring in just the story side of it, like having, like, I love when, before we do an interview on More Than Profit, we're like, hey, we want you to share stories. We want to hear, about you, because I think those are what makes life interesting. And I just think it's not always the lessons that we get as much as just hearing how they got there. Like the stories we heard today from two very different businesses were amazing. And I just think the human side to it was just fun to be a part of.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, because Brian, your perspective, a lot of times people they'll be presenting in front of a room and they're talking about these amazing things, and then afterwards somebody will come up and be like, "Yeah, 30% of that is what I do." You hear all these side conversations. Yeah. What we've got to remember is just we keep the mic running.
Yes.
After because that's where the real stuff happens.
So when you said, it just made me think of we did something this summer, and actually Bryce wasn't there, but TJ was there. And there was a guy speaking about, he did a ton of stuff around like human relationships. And It was great.
Conflict resolution.
Yes, yeah. Well, I don't want to get too specific because if he, but anyways, but what was funny is his wife came up to me afterwards and she goes, he does about 30% of that. And I'm like, that's the stuff people need to hear because people are like, the whole time the spouse are sitting there going, must be nice to be married to that person. And the whole thing, and I just thought, yeah, maybe not. So, but anyways, I hope that. And again, I really I believe in what Access Ventures is doing. And I believe that everything that we've done is on the human side. Everything has been, and even for us, I mean, it is a testimony to true relationship, Bryce is my boss and I hate saying that, but I know on a Saturday, if I get a call from Bryce, he's calling as a friend, not as my boss. And, we have good parameters, even, talking about that, I think is part of what makes Access Ventures so interesting and why, when people ask, is it my best job? I'm like, it's by far my best job because I do get to work with my friends and we fight and have disagreements and all those other things and like anyone else has. But I just go at the end of the day, there's a strong bond. And I hope that's what, as you as listeners get to hear and feel. And now that we're going to be doing videos,
we hope.
From my posture.
Yes.
One of the questions was over the last 10 years, what are some of your reflections? And when I came in, I was very transactional and I didn't really, people were kind of secondary. I remember thinking about how do you rate the team? I'm like, I don't care.
That's just so true.
It is. But I would say now being a relational investor, so seeing that play out in our work and all the people we work with is, that's where so much of the joy and fun of my work has come from, but also our best performing investments came out of our relationships with the founder. Mm-hmm. To the conversation of ethic today, we're nothing on their cap table, but they will give us the conference room, the tour, sit down, tell us their story. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's genuine.
Yeah, it's genuine. I think that's a good point, TJ, and that's a good word to go out on too, because it's relational investing is hard because it doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's something to just be reminded of. It's we've definitely had our fair share of things not work out. You've heard great, amazing stories, but there are things that just break your heart and don't go the way you think they should or you would like. And I think
on the flip side of it, it's very personal to you.
It's very personal. It's very personal and relational stuff is hard. And I think that's why people don't do it because it's just that arm's distance kind of, let's just protect. But I do think, the good outweighs the bad. And I think pressing in is always the right direction. So we'll keep doing it. And it's going to be hard as we do it, but it's going to be worth it. So thanks, guys. Today's conversation was a special one, an opportunity for us as a team to reflect on the lessons of 2024, the milestones that we've reached, and the challenges that have shaped us. We also look forward to 2025 with a sense of purpose, knowing there's still so much work to do in redefining how capital can create more flourishing. As we step into this next chapter of More Than Profit, with each of us taking on hosting duties, our goal remains clear: to bring you diverse voices, bold ideas, and actionable insights that inspire you to rethink how your resources can serve a greater purpose.
Thanks for tuning in to More Than Profit, a podcast produced by Access Ventures. We hope today's conversations inspired you to think differently about how values, vision, and capital can create meaningful change. To stay up to date, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. While you're there, we'd love if you left a review to help others find the show. Visit us at accessventures.org/podcast for additional content and past episodes. You can also join the conversation by following us on Twitter at ACS Ventures. Today's episode of More Than Profit was hosted by Bryce Butler. Our executive producer is Crystal Esquivel, and our associate producers are Bryn McKay and Bailey Pendleton. Audio production assistance is produced by Resonate Recording. Graphics are by Justin Esquivel. Today's theme music is Bonfire by As Tall as Pine and Better Start Now by Kid Penny. I'm Bryn McKay, and you've been listening to More Than Profit, a production of Access Ventures. See you next time.